They mocked me on Thanksgiving. My daughter-in-law lifted her glass, smiled at her coworkers, and called me a lazy, retired bum. They laughed, unaware they were mocking the woman who had built the company her friends relied on. That humiliation was the moment everything began to crack. My name is Marianne Halberg. I am 66 years old. When I walked up the steps to my son Ethan's house that afternoon, I was ready for a quiet holiday. I brought a pie, still warm in its tin, hoping it would make things easier between us after the strange distance of the past few months. But the air felt different the moment the door opened. Kayla stood there in a perfect cream sweater, smiling just enough to look polite but not enough to feel warm. Behind her, the living room buzzed with conversation. A group of young professionals from North Star Analytics, her world, not mine, crowded around the kitchen island with wine glasses and inside jokes. "Marianne, you made it," Kayla said lightly, already turning back to her friends. No hug, no welcome. Just a placeholder greeting, as though I were an obligation she needed to check off before returning to more interesting people. Ethan came over to take my coat, relieved but distracted. "Mom, you can put the pie on the counter. Kayla's team is finishing the appetizers." She called us team, as if family were just another department to oversee. I set the pie down, their laughter stirring the edges of something tight in my chest. I told myself it was only Thanksgiving nerves, but the way Kayla and her friends glanced at me amused. Superior, already judging, told me this day was heading somewhere none of us could come back from. And before dinner even started, the first insult was already waiting on her tongue. Dinner moved quickly, as if everyone had silently agreed to keep the evening loud enough to drown out anything real. Kayla placed the turkey platter in the center of the table like a hostess in a magazine spread, and her coworkers slid into their seats with the easy confidence of people who believed they belonged everywhere. I sat between Ethan and a young analyst named Jenna, who offered a polite smile before diving into a story about quarterly projections. She barely looked at me again. Kayla lifted her glass. "Before we start," she said, tapping the rim lightly, "I just want to thank my team for helping me survive this wild year at North Star." They cheered for her, proud and loud. Then she turned toward me. The smile was sweet, but the tone had an edge I'd been trying to ignore for months. "And thank you, Marianne, for joining us. Don't mind her, everyone. She's just my lazy, retired bum of a mother-in-law. She doesn't really get how the real world works anymore." The words landed like a slap. A few of her friends tried to hide their laughs, but others did not even bother. Someone muttered, "Wish I could retire early too." And another added, "Must be nice to just check out." Ethan's fork froze midair. "Kayla, come on," he said quietly. She shrugged, sipping her wine. "What?" "It's a joke. She knows I'm kidding." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat felt too tight to let anything through. Jenna leaned closer to Kayla. "Wait, seriously? You don't work at all?" Kayla laughed. "Nope, not a day. Just hangs out, critiques my cooking, and relaxes. Must be nice, right?" Ethan's jaw clenched. Mom worked her entire life. Kayla waved a hand. "Everyone works. I mean, real work. The kind we deal with now." The table went quiet. Not a protective silence, a complicit one. They were already siding with her. Inside my chest, something tight and steady coiled, reminding me I'd been silent for too long. The moment the tension from Kayla's joke faded, the table shifted into the kind of loud, eager chatter people use when they want to pretend nothing uncomfortable just happened. Jenna leaned forward. "Kayla, did you hear the board approved that restructuring plan? Finally, I swear, if the founder actually understood modern data systems, we wouldn't be dealing with this mess." A guy named Marcus snorted. "The founders what? In their 70s, 80s, whoever they are? They're stuck in the past. North Star needs someone who isn't afraid to shake things up. Kayla smirked. Exactly. Some of the old guard still thinks we can run a fast-growth tech firm like it's 1998. I kept my eyes on my plate, forcing my breathing to stay steady. Marcus continued. Honestly, I can't wait until the remaining legacy shares shift. Once that happens, the whole leadership team can finally be replaced. Jenna nodded. Especially that mysterious founder. The one who refuses to show up to anything. Total dead weight. My fingers tightened around my napkin. Kayla glanced at me then. Just for a second. And the look wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was dismissive. I was a piece of old furniture she was embarrassed to explain. Ethan tried to redirect the conversation. Let's just eat. All right, no need to unload work at the table. But they didn't stop. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Kayla, you'd make a great director once the board finally clears out the outdated voices. You and your team are the future. Kayla glowed at the praise. Well, someone has to pull North Star into the 21st century. Jenna laughed. First thing I'd do is modernize the entire analytics pipeline. If the founder doesn't retire soon, the company's gonna stall. I felt their words move through me like cold water. Every late night, every 70-hour week, every dollar I scraped together to rent that first warehouse by the river, every risk my husband and I took. None of them knew they were speaking to the person who built the place they treated like a stepping stone. Ethan touched my hand under the table. Small. Protective. He knew I was trying not to react. I lifted my glass, letting the stem steady my fingers. Their voices kept rising, chewing through everything I once poured into that company, and Kayla's smug smile widened. Unaware of the quiet fury building inside me, their voices faded into a dull hum as a different sound filled my mind, the clatter of old keyboards, the whir of cheap fans, the echo of footsteps in the drafty warehouse my husband and I rented near the Willamette River. North Star had begun there, on a concrete floor stained with oil and hope. We survived years when we could barely afford payroll. We bridged gaps with courage and luck, never letting our team feel how close we were to collapsing. Richard used to say, if we build this right, someone we love will inherit more than a business. They'll inherit a future. When he died, Kayla had just joined the company. She was sharp, ambitious, and so afraid of being overlooked that she overcompensated with confidence. I saw pieces of my younger self in her, the determination, the hunger. I thought stepping back would let her grow without feeling overshadowed. I never mentioned that part of why she was hired was my belief in her potential. I wanted her success to feel earned. But as the years passed, her ambition shifted into something sharper. She needed her coworkers to admire her. She needed Ethan to praise her. And now, she needed me to stay small so she could stay tall. I watched her laugh at another joke, her shoulders straight, her voice bright. Maybe my silence had protected her. Or maybe my silence had quietly erased my presence from her perception. After dinner, people drifted into smaller conversations. Ethan walked a couple of coworkers to the porch, and I slipped into the hallway to catch my breath. The noise from the dining room softened, but Kayla's voice carried through the half-closed door. I'm telling you, she said, low and confident. Once the board finally rotates out the older dead weight, we'll actually be able to run North Star like a modern company. Marcus chuckled. The founder won't matter much longer anyway. Whoever they are, they're basically a ghost. Never shows up, never takes calls, Jenna added. Someone said the founder still owns a big chunk of shares. That's insane. One outdated person holding the whole place back? It makes no sense. Kayla made a dismissive sound. Those shares will transfer eventually. And when they do, The leadership pipeline will open up. I'm not waiting another 2 years for a promotion because someone who doesn't understand our work refuses to let go. Marcus laughed again. If the founder is really that old, they probably don't even know what's happening inside their own company. Kayla's tone sharpened. Enough to slice the air. Exactly. We need people who actually get the industry, not someone clinging to the past. Once the board shifts, we can start phasing out the legacy crew. Clean slate. My breath stilled. This wasn't a casual insult. It was strategy. Ambition wrapped in arrogance, targeting the company I had built over decades. Jenna sighed dramatically. I swear, once the last of the old generation steps aside, North Star will finally reach its potential. And I'll be ready, Kayla said. Someone has to lead. I stepped back before they saw me, fingers cold against the wall. They weren't just mocking me. They were shaping a future as if my contributions and existence no longer mattered. I left Ethan's house earlier than anyone expected. I told him I felt tired, and he didn't question it. Kayla didn't walk me to the door. She barely looked up from her phone. Her laughter followed me onto the porch like a final insult. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet. Every word they'd said replayed in my head, each one carving deeper into something I'd spent decades building. By the time I stepped into my living room, the decision was already made. I went straight to the old walnut desk Richard built for me. The bottom drawer stuck like always, but I pulled harder until it loosened. The metal lockbox inside was small, battered, and cold against my palms. I carried it to the dining table and sat down. The key was still taped beneath the drawer. Richard had insisted we keep everything simple. I unlocked the box. Inside were the documents that built my entire life, the incorporation papers for North Star Analytics, the original equity breakdown, the transfer agreements Richard and I signed when he got sick, and finally, the sealed envelope he called the safety net. The founder protection clause. If someone tries to dismantle what we built, he told me before he died, you'll need this. Promise me you won't let anyone erase you. I'd kept that promise in the back of my mind, hoping I'd never need it. My hands didn't shake when I picked up my phone. Daniel answered on the second ring. Marianne. Everything all right? No, I said. And it won't be unless we start an internal review. Quietly. Tonight. He didn't hesitate. Understood. I called Patricia next. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, her voice was firm. I'll pull the compliance files. We'll do this by the book. I closed the lockbox, slid it toward me, and rested both hands on the cool metal. I'd stayed silent long enough, and silence had only invited them to rewrite the story I lived. The first message hit early Monday morning. I was finishing my coffee when Patricia called. The audit flagged multiple violations. She said, 3 employees, all connected to Kayla. She listed the misuse of internal datasets, unapproved access to client information, and side-channel communication that broke confidentiality protocols. Not small mistakes, not accidents, real breaches. By noon, the shockwave started. Jenna was the first. She burst into the hallway outside North Star's glass conference rooms, voice sharp and almost cracking. This doesn't make sense. I followed the process. Mostly, why am I being pulled into HR? Marcus appeared next, pale and defensive. I don't even know what they mean by unauthorized access. Everyone does it. Everyone. Not everyone, Daniel said calmly as he stepped out of his office, and certainly not the people who should know better by now. Their eyes darted around, looking for someone to blame, someone to absorb the consequences they never believed would reach them. By 3 p.m, the first termination email went out, then the second, then the third, all final, all immediate. Texts started pinging in the group chats before the ink was dry. Accusations. Panic. disbelief. Kayla's name appeared in almost every thread. I didn't need to read screenshots to imagine the frenzy. At home, I sat in my armchair as my phone vibrated with updates I never asked for. Daniel messaged, "It's done." HR handled everything cleanly. Patricia added, "All terminations follow compliance policy, no loose ends." Across town, Kayla's composure began to crack. Ethan called me after work. "Mom, something happened. Kayla's been a wreck all evening. Her friends got fired today." I kept my voice steady. "I heard, she keeps saying it's unfair." He continued, "That the company's targeting them." "Is she being questioned?" I asked. He hesitated. "HR wants to meet with her tomorrow." Of course they did. She was their team lead. And whether she intended it or not, her leadership was at the center of everything. Ethan exhaled shakily. "Mom, she keeps saying she'll be fine, that nothing can happen to her." But the walls were already shaking, and she didn't even hear the cracks. I asked Ethan and Kayla to come by after work. No explanation, no tone, just a request. Ethan arrived first. Worried and quiet, Kayla followed a step behind him, her shoulders tight, her eyes red from crying. She sat on the edge of the sofa like someone bracing for impact. "Is this about the firings?" she asked. Voice thin but still defensive. "Because Marcus and Jenna swear this whole audit was blown out of proportion." I didn't answer her. I walked to the walnut desk in the corner and pulled open the bottom drawer. The lockbox came out heavy. Metal against wood. When I set it on the coffee table, Ethan's expression shifted. Kayla frowned. "What is that?" she asked. I unlocked it and opened the lid. Papers, old and worn at the edges, filled the box. I pulled out the first stack incorporation documents. "North Star Analytics," I said, placing them gently on the table. "Established 30 years ago by two founders. One of them was my husband. The other was me." Kayla blinked. What? I turned the page so she could see the signature line. "That's my name. Kayla." She stared at it as if the ink might rearrange itself. No, the founder is a man. Everyone knows that. My husband used his initials on early filings," I said softly, "to protect us while we built something risky. Later, people assumed he was the only one. I let them assume. I stepped back so the next generation, so you could grow." Ethan sank into the armchair. Kayla shook her head hard, like she could push the truth out of her ears. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you hide something like this?" "Because I wanted you to succeed on your own terms," I said, "not because you married into the company." I pulled out the next set of documents, the audit authorizations, signed under my shareholder authority. Her breath hitched. You're the one who approved this." "The firings, yes." Her face cracked, then fear, anger, humiliation, all fighting for space. I thought I was rising," she said. "You were," I answered, "but not by stepping on the people who built the ground beneath you." She stared at the papers, and the story she'd built about herself began to crumble. Piece by piece, Kayla's unpaid leave became official the next morning. HR called her before she even finished her first cup of coffee. Ethan told me later she just sat there, staring at the screen, whispering, "This can't be happening." But it was. By noon, the real damage had begun. Jenna sent her the first message. "You could have warned us." Then Marcus followed. "We trusted you. You said leadership wouldn't touch our team." A third coworker wrote, "My termination is on you. All of this is on you." Every new notification made her flinch. She tried replying at first, long, frantic explanations. But the more she typed, the colder their responses became. Eventually, they stopped replying altogether. By evening, the chat groups she used to dominate had removed her without a word. When Ethan came home, the house felt heavier. "Kayla," he called out. She was on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, phone dark on the cushion beside her. "They all hate me," she whispered. "I'm not even allowed to access my work email anymore. HR said I'll need leadership retraining and ethics courses before they consider reinstating me." Ethan sat beside her. "Kayla, this isn't about hate. This is about accountability." Her voice cracked. "I worked so hard. I gave everything. And now everyone thinks I'm a fraud." I watched the two of them from the doorway. Ethan looked torn, wanting to comfort her, but fighting a disappointment he didn't want to voice. His mother and his wife were suddenly on opposite sides of a truth too heavy to ignore. Kayla wiped her eyes. "Your mom doesn't even like me," she said. "She probably thinks I deserve this." Ethan let out a tired breath. "Mom didn't do this to you. You walked into it." Kayla looked at him then, really looked, and saw the shift, small, quiet, but unmistakable. The applause she'd counted on for years was gone, and the silence left behind was louder than anything she expected. Kayla came to my house the next afternoon, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She stepped inside quietly, hands clasped, eyes red. Ethan waited outside in the car, giving us space. "I don't know where to start," she whispered. "Start by sitting," I told her. She lowered herself onto the sofa like she was afraid it might reject her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I'm not here to punish you," I finally said. "North Star is a place that can build people or break them. You let the pressure shape you in the wrong direction." Kayla swallowed hard. "I don't deserve a second chance. Maybe not," I said, "but you need one." Her head lifted, confused. "I spoke with Daniel in HR. If you want to return, it won't be to your old role. You'll start a structured mentorship program, complete ethics training, and stay on probation for 6 months. You'll learn leadership the right way." Her breath hitched. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you're part of this family," I said, "and because saving someone is harder than firing them." I paused. "But you'll have to earn your place back. No shortcuts." Tears spilled over her lashes. "I'm sorry," she said, voice shaking, "for what I said, for who I let myself become. I don't want to be that person anymore." "I know," I answered. "Now prove it with your actions. Not just words." She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. When she left, she walked slower. Like each step carried something heavy she'd finally chosen to face. I stepped outside afterward, taking a deep breath as the cool Portland air reminded me the company and family could be rebuilt. The company would survive. The family might too, if we were all willing to rebuild piece by piece. If you've made it this far, go ahead and like this story, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. I'd love to know where you're watching from and which part stayed with you the most.